श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम् ॐ सुखं नित्यं प्रकाशं व्यापकं नामरूपयोः अधिष्ठानं बुद्ध्यबोध्यं बुद्धेर्दृक्तु निर्मलम् अपारं सर्ववेदान्त वेद्यं प्रत्यक्परं महः तदेवाहं नमत्तोऽन्यत् इति मे निश्चिता मतिः. So yesterday we saw the Guru answering the disciple that there will be no, and there was no samsara. There is no cycle of birth and death. So there is no sorrow. You don't have to worry about anything. After he says, the disciple asks, Atra akshepa samadhanani, like he does after every topic, wherever he discusses, he discussed a point. Now he is presenting the doubts regarding that topic. You said that there is no bondage, there is no realization, there is no samsara. What does that mean? So he's saying, first, sukha visheka akshepa samadhanani, the question regarding the pleasure, the happiness we experience. So 129, atmanah ananda rupatve विषय संबंधात आनंद भानम नौचितम इत्याक्षेपः. So the 129, very interesting. He says, if Atma is of the nature of bliss, if the self is of the nature of bliss, then we cannot have any kind of happiness with reference to the objects. But we do experience happiness with reference to the object. I experience happiness through objects, things. So he says, Hey Swamin, the disciple asks, Hey Swamin, O Lord, मम आत्मा यदि नित्य निर्देशीय परमानंद रूप एव भवति तदा विषयेन्द्रिय संबंधाधीनतया आत्मनि आनंद अनुभव न उपपद्येत अनुभूत एव तु विषय संबंधात् आत्मानंदः आत्मनि आनंदः. So he says, okay, O Lord, see, if myself is absolute of the nature of absolute bliss, okay, I should not be able to experience bliss through happiness through the objects, but I do experience. Why will I not be able to experience happiness through the objects? Since I am already bliss, it is like this. A person who is already drinking a cup of good coffee will not need a coffee chocolate. Why will he need a coffee chocolate? Because he is already experiencing coffee. Similarly, if I am already bliss, why will I experience any kind of bliss through like after taking a cup of a spoon of sugar, when you drink a coffee with sugar, we don't experience any sweetness in this coffee. Say, did you not put sugar? Why? Because already our tongue is coated with sweetness. Similarly, if I experience the bliss already, then I will not be able to experience any kind of bliss through the objects. But I do experience bliss through the objects. Iti tasya tasmat na ananda swarupatma kintu vishya sambandhadeva atmani anando vayate. Therefore, I cannot accept that the self is of the nature of bliss. What you said, I cannot accept. We experience the happiness through the association with objects. So we have to accept that objects gives us happiness. Association with sense objects give me happiness. Guru says 130. Ajnasya vishaya pravruto satyam tadiyantarmukha vruttau atmanando bhati vishayeshu na asti ananda iti samadhanam. Ajnasya, for the ignorant, vishaya pravruto satyam, when he is in association with the objects. When the ignorant is in association with the object, when the ignorant is in association with the objects, remember this, Tadi antarmukha vrittau atma anando bhati. When his mind becomes introvert, then the bliss of the self shines there. The bliss of the self shines there. Vishesha nasti ananda. There is no happiness with respect to the object per se. The object in itself does not have happiness, cannot produce any happiness. Inherently, there is no happiness possible with reference to object because it is inert. So, this is the answer. Iti samadhanam. That's the answer. Hey, Shishya, disciple. Yasya buddhihi atma surupam na janati tasya vishayecha jayate. Whose mind, buddhi here refers to the mind, antakarna. Whether you call it intellect or mind does not really matter. Whose mind does not have the experience of bliss of the self or the experience of self. Let us say experience of self. For him, the desire for the experience of object exists. For the one who does not have the experience of self, for that person, the desire for experience of objects takes place. Bhoga sadhananam stridhana putradinam atra vishaya sambandhena shabdena grahana. What does vishaya object thing mean? What do you mean by thing? The object. Object means the objects which are the means for experiences. Like stri, dhana, putradinam. Like woman, like wealth, like son, etc. Vishayechasya pumsaha buddhis chanchala bhavati. What is the nature of the person who is interested in experiencing the objects, the sense objects? So he says, a person who desires the sense objects, his mind will be very turbulent. It will not be steady. It will be very unsteady. It will be very turbulent. Okay. Chanchala bhavati. Chanchalaya buddho atma surupa ananda pratimbon bhaste. In a mind which is disturbed, which is turbulent, there can be no possibility of the bliss of the self to shine. Self is there. Whether mind is turbulent or disturbed does not really matter. It should shine, right? How can you say it will not shine? Okay. We give you an example. You want to shave. So I said, okay, I'll hold the mirror. You can shave. And I'm moving it here and there. Will you be able to shave properly? You say it's your face. Your face is not moving. What if my mirror is moving? Similarly, the reflecting medium is the mind. If the mind is moving, even though the face, which is the self, stays without any movement, it cannot become reflected in this mind, which is disturbed. So he says, Abhilashita Vishayalabhe. Now, the mind, in a disturbed mind, the reflection of the self does not take place. But how do I experience the bliss? So he says, Abhilashita Vishayalabhe tu ksanamatram buddhi sthiri bhavati. When you gain the desired object for a second, for a moment, the mind becomes stable, silent, established, meaning does not produce any thought function. But we can understand the mind does not produce any thought function which goes outside. Now, tada buddhi vrittir antarmukha bhavati. At that point of time, the thought function turns inwards. It becomes introvert. The thought function becomes introvert, meaning it turns inwards, not going towards the object. It turns inwards. This is not a natural thing. Turning the mind inwards needs a lot of practice. Why? Because you are going against the tide. The Shruti says the nature of the sense organs, the mind is to go outside. Paranchi Khani Vetrat Swayambhu. Paranchi Khani Vetrat Swayambhu. Paranchi means external. Khani means sense organ. Vetrat means creator. Who? Swayambhu, the creator. The creator created the sense organs to go externally. Tasmat Parang Pashyati Antaratman. Therefore, it sees only the external objects, not the internal self. Since the mind produced the thought function, and we saw the thought function can travel zigzag any which way and go any place, instead of going outside, it should have turn and go inside. Simple, easy, the job will be done without any issues, but does not take place. If you can direct the mind anywhere, even to the moon, why not direct it towards yourself? It does not take place. It needs a very strong, determined mind. That is why we say ashishto dridishto balishtaha. The person should have the desire, the person should have physical strength, and the person should have mental strength for doing that. Without that, it is impossible. So he says, Abhilashita, that does not mean you have to practice Chigung. Tada buddhi vrittir antarmukha bhavati. At that point of time, the mind turns inwards. When you experience something, the mind is satisfied. A satisfied mind becomes stable without movement. At that point of time, it turns inwards. Now, tasyam antarmukhayam vrittau atma swarupanando pratiphaliti. When in that thought function which has turned itself inwards, in that thought function, the self gets reflected. We saw this with reference to a rocket. A rocket which is launched, grasps the object, returns back. In that, the self Om gets reflected. We saw that with the example photo. So he says, Vritto Atma Swarupa Ananda, the inherent nature of the self, which is bliss, that gets reflected in the internal thought function. The thought function which has become internal. Tadrisha Atma Swarupa Ananda Pratibimbam Anubhavituhu Pumsaha Vishayabhyo Mama Anando Ajayate iti Bhrantir Utpadyate. For a person who experiences that kind of reflection of bliss in the mind, in the thought, that person thinks, I experienced a great amount of happiness with this object. That is Bhranti, that is an erroneous knowledge, that is an illusion, that's not a right knowledge. So, Vastutastu, in reality, Naivasti Jade Vishaye Ananda Leshopi. In an inert object, even for, we say this in Tamil, even for the sake of medicine, meaning you cannot drink any essence from it. There can be no essence possible. Even for the sake of saying, you cannot say there is an iota of bliss in the inert object. There can be not even an iota of bliss in inert object. There can be no association of happiness in the inert. So, kincha. Moreover, there is something else. Ananda utpattehe vishya adhinatve yat kinchit vishayajanya anandam anubhavatah pumsah vishayantare ichha utpatti dashayamapi prachina vishayanando anubhavitum arhati natu tatha asti anubhavah. Now, Ananda utpattehe vishayadhinatve. If the bliss, the happiness is experienced, the happiness experience is dependent on the object. The happiness experience is dependent on the object, then yatkinchit vishayajanya anandam anubhavatah. A person who is experiencing some kind of happiness with some object, does not really matter what object, what kind of happiness, some kind of happiness in some object. Now, for that person, pumsaha vishayantare ichha utpatti dashayam. Now, that person is interested in another object. Now, he is bored with this. He says, okay, no, he is not bored. He is experiencing this and the mind is naturally a monkey. So, while experiencing something, it sees something else. It wants that also. this and that. Now, prachina vishayanando anubhavitum arhati. And even during that period of time, even when the interest is towards another object, he should be able to experience the happiness through the previous object. No, that does not take place. He stops here and he goes to that. He does not experience this and goes to that. No, he does not do that. So, natu tatha asti anubhava. We don't have that kind of experience. One experience stops, the another experience starts. The another experience starts, this experience stops. That is how we say. Therefore, he says, aspat siddhante tu vishayantara asaktya punahapi buddhi chanchalye sati tasyam chanchalo buddhau na swarupananda pratibimbo bhati iti samadhanam nyayam. In our siddhanta, in Vedanta philosophy, this is the secret. He is saying, in Vedanta philosophy, Vishyantar Asaktya, because of the desire for another object, because of the attachment for another object, Punarapi Buddhi Chanchalye Sati, when the mind becomes turbulent again, disturbed again. I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing bliss because the mind has settled. Now, again I see, mind gets disturbed. It runs towards that object. Then, tasyam chanchala buddho, in that mind which is disturbed, let us see. Why do I not experience this bliss of the self? Answer is, the mind is disturbed. How do I experience the bliss of the self? When the mind is not disturbed, when the mind is at peace. Okay? Remember this. Now, when I am experiencing the bliss of object A, at the same time, I see another object B, I want to run towards that object B. So I am experiencing A, I am running towards B. So I should have to have experience of happiness with A and run towards B. So happiness is there with A, right? No, not right. Why? When you are running towards, that is why I have to stop and explain it again. When you are experiencing A, there is happiness because the mind stops. When you are running towards B, the mind gets disturbed again. Here, the experience stops because mind is disturbed. A disturbed mind cannot reflect the self. Understand? A disturbed mind cannot reflect the self. Because I was experiencing the happiness, it was okay. A, okay. B, mind gets disturbed. So I will not be able to experience the happiness of A also. So that is why he says, na swarupanando chanchala buddho na swarupananda pradimbo bhati iti samadhanam game. This should be the answer which you should have to understand. In a disturbed mind, there can be no possibility of experience of happiness. Okay. Now, kincha anyat. There is something else. What is that? Yadi Vishyadeva Anando Nemene Jayeta. Tada pravasat agata putra darshana janya anandaha sada anuvartitum arhati. Natu tatha bhavati. This is a practical example. This is a practical example many of us have seen and experienced. Yadi Vishyadeva Anando Niyamena Jayeta. He is not even talking about, see, if I am going to give an example, I am going to say, if the object is itself going to give you experience of happiness, then like the first coffee, the second, third coffee should give you this happiness. No, he is not a coffee affectant. He does not like his coffee. So he is giving us another example. He says, okay, if you think that every time you have association with that object, niyamena means there is a rule. Association with the object, happiness. So, if you think that, then tada pravasad agata putra darshana janya ananda. A person who is coming from a foreign country, a son coming from a foreign country, and you see him, you become very happy. The parents become very happy. Okay, wait. sada anuvartitum arhati, and that happiness should continuously be there. First day, second day, why are you not doing this, why are you not doing this, why will you do that, why will you not do that, you will start you are not going to get, okay, your daughter is going to have that, oh, mom started again. So you may not even understand that. That is how the nature is. So he says, sada anuvartitum, that experience of happiness the first time, does that do you experience it every time you see? No. Oh, I have seen you. Okay, I have my job, job is important, okay, natu tatha bhavati, we don't see that. The first time, that happiness, that is not seen every time. You'll say, okay, okay, move aside, I want to drink water. The happiness completely diminishes. Naturally, there is no escape here with reference to any object. He is giving you a very important example, because there is nothing like meeting your son after a long time, meeting your daughter after a long time. So that is the happiness. A good coffee, okay, I've had better coffee, you can say that, but you cannot say I've had a better son. No, this is the only son you have, this is the only daughter you have, you cannot say that. So he says, तथा ही कस्यचित् प्रियतरः पुत्रः चिरप्रवासी कालान्तरे प्रत्यागमत्. So he is explaining that example. This is how it is. कस्यचित् प्रियतरः पुत्रः, somebody is very dear son. चिरप्रवासी, he stays outside for long period. Kalantre, at a different point of time, pratyagamat, he came back. A person, a son who is staying in a different state or country comes back after a long period of time. Tad darshana kshane jayamanah pituhu anandah. Pituhu anandah, the father's happiness when he sees that son. Chirakalam avichinnataya anuvartitum arhati, that should flow for a long period of time, but does not happen. Ananda hetoh putrasya sada sanhitatvat, why should take place for a long period of time? Because what is the cause for the happiness? Son, and he is there, he is always there in your house now, you should have to have the experience, but does not happen. Natu tatha anubhayate, we don't see that. The second day, there is some issue or other, this is why I don't come here. The sons and daughters, they always have this statement, this is why I don't want to come here. Always you start with that, you do that, I don't like it, but still you do that. So he says, siddhante to, in the siddhanta, in vedanta, putra darshanad putra darshana, no, putra darshanadi tat vishayajanya anandasya chiram ananuvrittireva evam upapadyate. In Vedanta, because of seeing the sun, etc., whatever the object be, the happiness does not exist continuously for a long period of time. And that can be explained in this way. How? Tattad vishaya labhakshane. This is how it could be explained. Tattad vishaya labhakshane buddhihi nishchali bhavati. He is repeating the idea again. When you experience an object, your mind becomes stable, silent. Now, tada, at that point of time, nishchalayam buddhi vrittau atma surupananda pradimbo bhavati. In that silent mind, the nishchalayam buddhi vrittau, in that silent mind, the bliss of the self gets reflected. So eva anando anubhuyate, and that bliss of the self is what you are experiencing. Tataha, therefore, vishayantra ichchaya punah api buddhehe chanchalye sati. When with respect to another object, when the mind gets disturbed, then Tasya buddhau Swarupananda Pratipalanasya Vichedat. There is no connection, association with the Swarupananda. There is the Swarupananda, the self, the bliss of the self does not get reflected in the buddhi because the mind is disturbed. The mirror is disturbed. Therefore, Purata eva satyapi prachina vishaye na ananda anuvrutti. Though the object A exists in front of you, still there is no happiness. The happiness does not flow through, does not continue. Tasma, therefore, na vishaye asti ananda. Therefore, there is no happiness with respect to object. Kincha yadi. Kincha yadi. But यदि नियमेन विषयाधीन एव आनंदो भवेत् तदा समाधौ योगानंदो न प्रकाशेत. Now, remember this. This is another interesting thing. If you say only the rule is niyama, niyama means rule. The rule is only if there is object, there can be happiness. If there is no object, there can be no happiness. If you accept that rule, object, happiness. No object, no happiness. Simple. If you accept that as a rule, then he says, Samadho. In the Samadhi Kala, during the practice of Samadhi, Yoganando na prakasheta. They call in Samadhi, the bliss which you experience is called as Yogananda. It is called as Yogananda. In Panchadashi, the last 5 chapters deal with different kinds of Ananda. Vishayananda, Yogananda is one of them. Brahmananda is other. Yogananda. Yogananda means the Ananda which you experience through yoga. What does that mean really? The Ananda which you experience through object is Vishayananda. The Ananda which you experience without an object is Yogananda. That is not staying put in the self. That is, I will not say that is not the bliss of the self. That is also bliss of the self. If you say Ananda, that is of the bliss. There can be no bliss other than the self. So, the bliss of the self is what you experience in Yogananda also. But there is no object which is the cause for Yogananda in Samadhi. When you enter Samadhi, there is no vritti with respect to the objects. At that point of time, there is still a happiness. That is why people want to enter the Samadhi again and again and again and again. And that Samadhi, which is the yogic Samadhi, has no value for Vedanti. There is no point in entering that Samadhi because that Samadhi is limited by time, space, causation. It is limited in every way. I can stay in that Samadhi for a brief period of time. I can stay in the Samadhi only in a place which is conducive for my meditation. I cannot enter meditation at my will. So all these aspects, they are all dependent on each other. Therefore, yogic Samadhi cannot be the Vedantic Samadhi, A, because it is limited. B, yogic Samadhi, in yogic Samadhi, we are not having the identity. The Samadhi is not through the identity of individual self and the absolute self. The Samadhi is of the knowledge of individual self. There is no identity between individual self and absolute self. There is only knowledge of the individual self there. And that itself gives a bliss. And you think, oh, that is all. No. Because the final of the Samadhi, after Vichara, after Vitarka, after Anandatmaka, the final one is Asmitatmaka. The final Samadhi they accept in yoga is Asmita. Asmita means existence. That is not the identity existence. That is the existence of the individual self. And these fellows get confused. Every yogi wants to accept, oh, this is what is said in the yoga also. This is not said in the yoga. If that is what is said in the yoga, how can yoga school be different from Vedanta school? So in yoga, you gain the experience of the individual self. In Vedanta, you gain the identity knowledge of individual self and absolute self. That is the difference. That is why we have to enter into Tattvamasi, Mahavakya. Okay, so he says that samadhi, which is without any object, should not be there. You should not experience that happiness. Tatha sushuptopi nanandabhanam. I don't know how it happens in the yoga samadhi. I have not experienced. Okay, I'll give you experience, which you know. In deep sleep, there is no object. I didn't know anything. I slept like a log. You say, I don't know anything. You say, there is no object. But still, very good sleep. You experience the happiness. So that can be also an experience. Sushupti samadhyoho drishya rupa vishaya sambandhasya bhavat. Because in deep sleep as well as in samadhi, there is no association with the sense objects. Tasmat na vishaya ananda leshopi asti. Therefore, there is not even an iota of bliss, happiness in the object. In the objects, there can be not even an iota, not even a small portion, a wee bit. Kintu Atma Swarupananda eva sarvatmana sarvatra avbhasate. But how do we experience the bliss then? Atma Swarupananda eva, the bliss of the self alone, sarvatmana sarvatra avbhasate, in all these forms. In yoga, bliss of the self. With respect to coffee, bliss of the self. With respect to the sun from foreign country, bliss of the self. Though we don't know, but that is all based on the happiness of the bliss of the self. How do you know this? I'll give you a pramana. Means of right knowledge. What does it say? Raso vaisaha rasaguhyevayam labdhanandi bhavati kohyevanyat kaf pranyad yadesha anando Atma Anando Nasyat. Taittiriya Upanishad very beautifully says this. Raso Vaisaha, that is of the nature of essence. And gaining that essence, Rasago Hevayam Labdva, gaining that essence, gaining that taste, Anandi Bhavati, he becomes happy. But wait, take the next line. If the self is not of the nature of bliss, Kohi heva anyat kaf pranyat. Who will desire to live? Who will desire to breathe? If the self is art of the nature of happiness, if the self is of the nature of pain, sorrow, then I won't even dare to breathe in. I breathe in even though there is a pain here and there. I still breathe in because self is of the nature of bliss. So we have to remember that. Etaseva anandasya anyani bhutani matram upajivanti. Bradani Upanishad also says, Etaseva anandasya, only the bliss of the self. Anyani bhutani, all the other beings, matrani upajivanti. Matra means a portion. A portion of this bliss of the self is what is experienced through everything by everyone. Everyone experiences. See there, the happiness I experienced is not the same as you experienced. True. But the happiness I experienced may not be the level of happiness you experienced, but the happiness I experienced is the same as you experienced, because we both experience the happiness of self. There may be levels, gradation in the happiness experience, but the experience is a self for both of us, for everyone. That does not differ. Okay? Iti ityadi shruti. Like that, there are hundreds of shrutis. So he says, Hey Shishya, O disciple, Nirtishya Ananda Swarupa eva Atma iti Vishi Sambandhacha Anando Abhivyajate iti cha janihi. See, Niratishya Ananda Swarupa eva Atma. Understand this. The self is of the nature of absolute bliss. And Vishya Sambandhacha Anando Abhivajyate iti Janihi. And understand also that when you have the association with the sense objects, this bliss gets manifest. When you have association with the sense object, this very bliss gets manifest. That's all. Like there is this metal or a kind of a stone. You get here in Ireland, the green stone. There is a green stone. You break it from the earth. That's a famous stone here, green stone. You take it from earth. You look at it, there is no reflection. Then you start polishing it. More it becomes polished, more it reflects your face. It's the same stone. There is no difference. And it is the same face. There is no difference there also. But the stone is more polished now than it was before. That is the only difference. So if the mind is same. The reflected self is also same. But the thing is, the impure mind is not able to access that bliss. The pure mind is able to access that bliss always. That is the difference. So he says, hey Sishya, understand the bliss of the self is what manifests when you are in association with the objects. Though we understand this, every time when the objects are there, the sense object not even are there. When the sense object is there, then the mind immediately runs towards that. Even though, oh, it is only the bliss of the self, which I experience everywhere. Oh, bring the coffee. Over. Over. You are not able to maintain that because we have an idea of the bliss of the self, but not the experience of the bliss of the self, the immediate knowledge of the bliss of the self, or knowledge of the bliss of the self. We have an idea. Just an idea. There is no proof for that. So he says, how do you know this? He says, Adrushyo drishyate rahu grihitena yathenduna tatha anubhava matratma drishyena atma avalokyate iti smritehe. The smriti says, Adrushyaha drishyate rahu grihitena yatha induna tatha anubhava matra atma drishyena atma avalokyate. Okay. There is a thing called Rahu. During the eclipse in the Hindu scriptures, it is said the Rahu, which is the head portion of the snake, eats up this moon or sun because he sat in between the sun and moon, cheating the others. See, the nectar, after churning the ocean, milk ocean, they got this nectar. So Vishnu said, I will distribute the nectar. Vishnu came in the form of a beautiful girl and he said, I will distribute the nectar. And the deities and the demons, they were happy to see this girl. They said, okay, give that girl, give it to her. So she was cheating the demons by not offering them the nectar, just a smile. Hi. Then she goes and offers it to the deities. Now, all these fellows were fooled except this fellow, Rahu. So he saw this, what is happening. Okay, this girl, she's going there, she's giving the nectar, but when she comes to our side, she's just cheating us. Okay, I know. So he shifts position from the side of demon, he goes to the side of deity and sits between sun and moon. He sits between sun and moon. And Vishnu, in playful mood, gives this fellow also some portion of nectar and he drinks. The moment he is drinking, sun and moon say, oh, this fellow is not our group. Immediately, Vishnu uses his disc to cut his head. But this fellow has already partaken this nectar. So he becomes eternal. Now, to take revenge, he goes and swallows up a sun and moon every time he gets a chance. That is what we call it as eclipse. How beautiful story this is. Now, because this fellow has only head, even if he swallows, it comes to the other side. Okay? Now, do you know this nodal point called Rahu? Have you seen this Rahu? See, if you take a horoscope, you can see in Indian horoscope, especially, you can see Jupiter. Oh, that is Jupiter. Okay, that glows and comes. Okay, Mars. Oh, that red star, that red planet, that is Mars. Okay, Saturn. Oh, that one with the ring. Oh, that is Saturn. You can see every other planet. You cannot see Rahu and Ketu. But does that mean Rahu and Ketu does not exist? You can never see. You can see. You have seen. When? During the eclipse. What is the darkness? That is Rahu. So that is why he says, Drishyate adrishyaha Rahuhu. Rahuhu, which is invisible, becomes visible. When? Yatha indhuna grihitena. When he grasps the moon. When he is caught by, or when he catches hold of the moon, or when he catches the moon, when he is afflicted by the moon. Tatha, similarly, Anubhatra Atma, the self which is of the nature of bliss, experience. The self which is of the nature of experience. Ever experiential. Self is of the nature of experience, means it is ever experiential. There is nothing other than self which we are experiencing, but we don't understand that. So he says, Drishyena Atma avalokyate. Though it is ever experienced, though it is ever experiential, we see the self through the objects. We gain the knowledge of existence of self through the objects. When you experience the object, you experience Bill. Oh, self. Not through the self itself. Only when you experience the object, you understand the self. So, ayam eva samichina siddhanta. This is what is the proper teaching. Yadi asti atra Yadyasti atra te samshayah nirvelikameva pucha. If you have doubt regarding this, ask without any problem. Just ask me. In Hindi, they say bindas. Without any difficulty, ask me. Don't think about anything else. Just ask me. Nirvelikameva. Punaha suspashtameva tvam bodhayami iti gururaha. Bodhayamiti. And again, I will explain you clearly. Suspashtam, very clearly. He explained everything very clearly. But if you have doubt regarding this, ask. I will explain it again in detail. Now, 131. 131. Jnaninopi vishayeshu ichha. Vishaya sambandhat atmanandava abhavasascha bhavati nava iti tattva drishtihi pritchati. This is a very interesting question by Tattva Drishti. I told you to remember something. You probably forgot. I remind you again. But before that, let us see this topic. What does he say? Jnaninopi vishayeshu ichha. The jnanis, the liberated ones, also have desire for the objects. This is a question by Tattva Drishti. Okay, remember that. Vishaya sambandhad atmananda avabhasascha bhavati. And when, like the ignorant has association with the objects and gains the bliss of the self, the jnani also has the association with the objects and gains the bliss of the self. Or does he not? Does he gain the bliss of the self when in association with the object, or does he not? If you say he does not experience bliss of the self through the objects, then the objects are like those cream cracker biscuits which are like cardboards, no taste. every object will become like a, or better, some of us are well equipped to understand this example. They'll be like our corona experience. Whatever you eat, they'll be tasting like sand. No taste at all. So you experience anything, there'll be no bliss. Then the jnani will be like this. Why did I gain this realization? I am caught with this. So he says, will he experience it or not? Okay, now we understand. Jnani also has association with the object. Will he experience through the association of the object happiness or not? That is the question. Now, what did I remember? What did I remind you to ask you to remember? The topic of a previous topic. There we said, Ajnasya Vishaya Pravurtau Satyam. Tadiya antarmukha vrutto, when the ignorant, I repeated again and again, Ajnasya Vishaya Pravurtau Satyam, when the ignorant is involved with the objects of sense organs. Now we are talking about the jnani, the liberated one. Now listen to the question. This is a very important thing. He answers it. I will answer also, because this answer does not suit well with the proper Vedanta, which he will also explain. But the answer there is not proper. It cannot be accepted to be proper. We'll come to this. He say, Hey Sadguru, Vishya Sambandhat Atma Ananda Avabhasa Kramo Agya Vishaye Pratipadito Bhavadbihi. Oh Guru, thank you, sir. Sir, you have explained very nicely the experience of bliss gained through the association with the objects. Very good. You have explained it very beautifully. Na jnani vishay, but you didn't explain it with reference to the jnani. Okay. What is your question? Yataha yasya buddhihi atmaswarupa vimukha tam adhikritya prastavah kritah purva bhavatbihi. See, because you explained about people whose minds are turned outwards from the self towards the sense objects. You explained regarding them. Tadrishascha ajnaniya na jnani, and the people whose minds are, whose hearts are, whose intellect is turned away from the self can be only ignorant, not the liberated, not the jnani. Tasma, therefore, idanim jnaninopi visheshu ichha tasyapi vishya sambandhat purukta kramena sukhabhivaktischa jayate nava iti bodhetum arhati bhavantah. Therefore, it is proper for you to explain, please sir, whether the jnani will also be interested in the sense object. Will the jnani be also interested in the sense object A? Will he also gain the bliss through the sense objects B? That is the question. Please explain me. Will the jnani have desire for sense objects A? Will the jnani experience happiness through sense objects or not B? Okay. 132. Vyavahara kale jnani api atma vimukha eva saha vishayanandasya swarupanandat abhinnatam manyate. Now he is answering. Just remember, he is just giving an answer. This is not a proper solution, but he is answering, that's all. Why? He says, Vyavahara kale, during the time of transaction with the world, the transit reaction, jnani api atma vimukha eva, the jnani also will have his mind turned away from the self. He will have his mind turned away from the self. But the next question, what is that? Will he experience the happiness through the objects? For that he says, Meaning, first question was, will he have desire for objects? Yes, that is the answer. Will he have experience for the experience of happiness to the sense object? That is what is answered now. Sir, Vishyananda Surupananda Abhinnatam Manyate, he understands the happiness gained to the object is not different from the happiness of the self. There are two questions here. One, will he have desire? He says he will have desire. Two, will he be experiencing the happiness? He says he will experience, but he will understand it not to be different from his own self, the bliss of the self. He will not differentiate this, oh, this object. No, it's not object bliss, it's my bliss. He will understand that identity. Whereas the ignorant will not understand the identity. So the first question, the answer for the first question is he will see the external world. The second question answer is he will not experience the bliss to be different from himself. There is a kind of a contradiction here. He will see the external world, but he will not see the bliss to be of the external world. Remember the first question. We'll discuss about this later. Hey Shishya, O disciple, Shrunu Savadhana Manaha, you have asked a very good question. Therefore, listen to me carefully with focus. Yadu Uktam Atma Swarupa Vaimukhyam Eva Vishi Ichchadi Karanam Iti. Yadu Uktam Atma Swarupa Vaikmukhyam Eva Vishi Ichchadi Karanam Iti. Tanna Kevalam Ajnase Eva. Kintu Jnaninopi Tulyam Eva Sat. You said that the desire for objects is because the mind is turned away from the self. Mind turning away from the self is the cause for the desire for the objects. This what you said, this does not only fit for the ignorant, it also fits for the jnani also. The same idea. His mind is turned away from the self, therefore he goes behind the sense objects. What he talks about is during the transaction, during the experience of his prarabdha karma, the mind of the jnani goes towards the prarabdha karma object. Whatever his prarabdha karma, he has to experience that object. With reference to that, he is talking about. He is not talking about the artificial desire which we have because of the association with the object. Object, we have this desire. That is not what he is. It is a thought function which is created by the prarabdha karma. Now here again, though I have explained it, I have explained why he runs behind the object. That though is explained, this is not the answer again. Remember, this is not the answer also. We'll see the answer. Jnanicha yada vyavahare pravartate tada sah tattva visparana purvakam eva pravartate. When the jnani is involved with the transaction, with the worldly transaction, then he forgets the true nature of true self. He forgets the nature of true self. Okay, that is what he says. This is not my answer. I am keeping on reminding you, though there are some errors in this text. This text is not completely error free. This one portion is also similar. Let me, before entering into this topic, let me explain you something. I explained you with an example yesterday. I don't know to ride a car. I don't know to drive a car. If you are going to cycle, let us say cycle. If you have ridden a cycle, you will know there are so many things you have to watch while you start the cycle. You have to place your handlebar straight. Okay. You have to have your back straight. It should not be like this. It should not be like this. You have to pedal at the same time. No, leg. No, not hand, leg. You have to move your leg, not your hand. You have to watch straight, not here and there. All these while practicing the cycle. Once you have learned how to cycle, once you have become an expert in cycling, you don't have to worry about anything. Just cycle goes. This fellow takes the cell phone from the pocket and clicks the number and calls. Yes. 1 second. He takes a paper and keeps it on the place where he places the cell phone and writes while doing cycling. And there are crazy fellows who cycle with one tire up, and there are fellows who just lie down and cycle. There are different kinds of things which they do cycling. But while you begin to cycle, there are so many things which you have to take care, which you have to be very careful. Otherwise, you will fall. Similarly, the Jnani is like an expert cyclist. Jnani is like an expert cyclist. He does not need to worry about anything. His mind is not diverted by the cell phone, by the pen, by the writing, by the road, by the handlebar, by the pedal. No. They are all part of him. They are all not seen to be different from him. For the beginner, everything is different from him. He has to hold on to the handlebar. Like people who have seen the pujaris do the puja. It's a very funny thing. You have to hold on to the bell in one hand and shake it horizontally. Okay. And you have the camphor plate in another hand, which you have to rotate. Now, no, no, you have to manage it. Which hand you have to move around and which you have to have taken into one place and shake. Once you do that, this becomes natural. You can keep on shaking this bell and this. There is no, you can do any which way. In Calcutta, they have this habit of taking this pot and doing dance with that. You have to see that. It's a very interesting thing. They'll do dance. There is fire in the pot. But still, nothing falls, nothing happens. They dance and not just dance straight. They will dance bending their body below the above the hip and rotate. Even normally that is impossible. Even for a normal person, without any of this, it's impossible. And they'll do this, go like that and come back. So an expert will not be disturbed by any of this. Similarly, the Jnani will not be disturbed by any of this. That is what we have to remember, because this gives an idea that the Jnani will be attracted towards the object, because they have this. There is a statement in the introduction portion of the Brahma Sutra. There, Bhagavan Bhashyakara uses a Sutra Bhuta Vakya. We call it a aphorism statement. The statement says, Pashubhishcha Avisheshat. Pashubhishcha Avisheshat. What does that mean? Pashu means cattle, cow. With reference to the cattle's, Pashubhihi, with reference to the cattle's Avisheshat, there is no difference. There is no difference between this intelligent one. He is not talking about the liberated one. He is talking about the intelligent one. There is no difference between the intelligent one and the wise one and the cattle. How? He goes on to explain this sutra. He comments upon it. He says, like a cattle sees a person with a green, he runs towards him. Green grass, I mean. Okay, it runs towards him. And when he shows a stick, it runs away from him. Similarly, this person also, when he shows greens I'm talking about money. So greens, he runs towards him. And when he shows a sticker or some weapon, he runs away from him. Similar. So that is what he says. Vishaya vritti kale agyavat aste jnani api. That idea is from Brahma Sutra. During the time of experience or involvement with the objects, jnani also will behave like ignorant. That idea, if you take it as verbatim, literally, then there is a problem. There is a problem. The idea of the jnani, the ignorant, while you're talking about the ignorant, we said the ignorant cannot stay put in the present. All that idea which the neo yogi sell, the neo guru sell of staying in the present, that doesn't happen. That cannot happen because inherently the mind has the habit of going. That is its nature. You cannot change the nature of mind. But for the jnani, since there is no mind, the transaction does not take place like for the ignorant. That is there is a huge difference. The difference is this. I'll explain it with another example. There is an issue with this. We have to remove the screw or something and tighten it. I'm saying an example. Now, what should we do? We have to go and find a screwdriver, proper screwdriver in the house somewhere, and use it. And once the job is done, oh, this screwdriver was very useful. Put it in the pocket. Okay, screwdriver. And then I want to break this something here. I want to break this. Bring a hammer. Hammer was also useful. Keep it. Then saw. Saw is also very useful. Keep it. What and all are you going to carry with you? So, with respect to the jnani, the mind is an instrument. Remember that. The mind is not, see, like the dog, which is to be trained. You have to, when you bring a dog like Molly, you have to train it. You have to take it for walking. You have to take it for potty training, everything. But once it learns the rope, then it is you who is trained by the dog, not the dog training you, training the dog. You are taken for a walk by the dog. First, you have to pull the dog. Later, the dog pulls you. Meaning, first, while practicing, we have to bring the mind under the control. But for us, the mind is keeping us under its control. The dog should be in our control, but we are under the dog's control. Mind should be in our control, but we are under the mind's control. That is all the problem. That is the difference between the jnani and ignorant. Remember that when he says, oh, the jnani will also have the same kind of transaction, the ignorant will also have the same kind of transaction, does not mean the same thing. It does not mean the same thing. Because for the jnani, the mind is an instrument which he uses according to his prarabdha for the transaction if necessary. There are things even without thinking we do. Even we don't even realize that we are doing. We don't know that we are breathing in and breathing out. We don't even realize we are breathing in and breathing out. We don't even realize that we are blinking our eyes. How many times did we blink? We don't know. Because they are all natural. But once we have asthma or some breathing issues, we know that we are breathing in. We know that we are breathing out. Similarly, the jnani is like a person who has breathing issues. He knows clearly what is happening. We are like a person who does not have any breathing issue. We don't even know what is happening. Only when it hits us, We understand, oh, something hit me. Okay. We don't even realize. Oh, was it there? It is all in front of us. We don't realize. So that is the difference between Jnani and Ajnani. Because if you read this topic and understand it as it is, then you'll say, oh, he is also. The idea of the ignorant also eating is same thing, and Jnani also eating. Ignorant also sleeps. Jnani also sleeps. Ignorant also does things. Jnani also does things. What is the difference between ignorant and Jnani? The Zen Buddhism will say, oh, I am in the present and you are not in the present. What does that mean? That means he does not create thought functions. He is not under the grasp of thought function, whereas this ignorant fellow is under the grasp of thought function. What does that mean? When he is eating, he is going to say, oh, but what Guruji brought, that sweet is very good, but this is okay. I cannot say this is good, but it is okay. But Guruji's sweet was very good. Okay. And oh, that one, yesterday she made very nicely. This today, it is not. So you are not eating actually. While eating, there are so many thoughts which are coming in your head. You are not eating. While eating, there are so many thoughts. But for the Jnani, these does not exist. He eats over. There is no other thought other than that. That is what we say as living in present. Ignorant can never live in present. Never. Only a realized can live in the present. Remember that. Don't go. People have this beautiful idea of selling things like this. Though the things which cannot be, that are not possible, that are impossible completely. Like Patanjali Yoga. We teach you Patanjali Yoga. Idiots, there is no Patanjali Yoga actually. Patanjali mentions only 4 yoga postures. That's all. No one is studying or teaching Patanjali Yoga. So this is like that. Okay. Now here, Vishaya pravritti kale ajnavat aste jnani api. In during the time of involvement in the with the such object, the jnani also behaves as though he is ignorant. Okay. Jnanino hi chittam. How? We will see this. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.